There were exactly 3 women in the world Rafael De Luca was afraid of. The first was his mother, who had been dead 9 years and still walked through his dreams in a black dress with her hair down. The second was a Korean accountant in Geneva who knew which numbered accounts had his fingerprints on them. The third he had not yet met. He would meet her at 9:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in a ballroom at the Pierre, and she would say one word to him in Arabic, and by midnight the Korean accountant in Geneva would no longer be the second name on his list. Because by midnight nothing on Rafael De Luca's lists would be the same. By midnight he would have a new list, and on the new list there would be only one name, and the name would be hers, and he would still not be sure if what he felt when he thought of her was the kind of fear that protects a man or the kind of fear that destroys him. He was 38 years old. He had killed a man for the first time at 17, in a basement in Reggio Calabria, with an iron pipe and his uncle's voice in his ear telling him to keep his eyes open the whole time. He had not closed his eyes since. He would close them tonight. He would close them with her hand on his throat, in the back of a car on 5th Avenue, with snow falling on the windshield and her face 6 inches from his and a vow in Arabic between them that neither of them had chosen, but neither of them was going to be able to take back. But all of that was later. First there was the auction. First there was the ballroom at the Pier, lit from below the codex case, so the gold leaf borders of the book on the velvet cushion looked like they were breathing under the glass, and 40 private bodyguards along the walls, and 80 bidders in their seats, and a man named Voronov in the second row from the back who had come tonight specifically to murder a woman he had never seen the face of, and a woman in a dove-gray serving uniform at the end of the prince's table who was about to give him the face. None of them knew what was coming, not even her. She thought she knew. She had been planning this night for 2 years. She had been planning the 11 years that led up to it for longer than that. She had not planned for one thing. She had not planned for Rafael De Luca's face. She would see his face for the first time at 9:32 p.m. By 9:33 she would understand that the man she had spent 3 years selling forged antiquities to over a secured line. The man she had been told was a butcher who had developed expensive manners. The man she had carefully arranged tonight to humiliate in front of every enemy he had was the man who had spared her on a staircase in Damascus when she was 12 years old. She would understand it from the way he held his shoulders, from the way the muscle in his jaw worked when he was thinking, from the half-second pause before he placed his right foot down when he walked. The body remembers what the mind has agreed not to. She had been trained by old men in Amman who did not lie to children, to read bodies the way other women read poetry. She read his, and she had to put both her hands on her tray very gently to stop them from shaking, because the body she was reading was the body of the only man who had ever let her live when his orders had been to kill her. And that body was now 30 feet away, and it was walking toward her. But none of that had happened yet. First, the room had to fill. The bidders came in across 40 minutes, in 2s and 3s, in the order of their wealth and the carefulness of their security. The Cairene woman with the Coptic cross came in first, alone, on foot from a hotel 2 blocks away. The Saudi prince came in next with 3 men who walked like soldiers and pretended they were not. The Greek with the cargo ships came in with a woman who was not his wife and a quiet Englishman who carried the briefcase. The old woman from the banking family in Geneva came in last among the named, on the arm of a granddaughter who had been told nothing about what the family was buying or why. And the woman in dove gray moved through them all on her circuit with a steel pitcher in her right hand and a small dull tray balanced on the palm of her left, and she did not look up, and she did not let her hand shake, and she did not let her shoulders roll. She had been graded by an old woman in Amman who had once been a presidential bodyguard on the precise angle at which her shoulders should not roll. She had earned a passing grade. She knew she had earned it. She poured for the oil minister from Doha. She poured for the Englishman with the briefcase. She poured for the granddaughter from Geneva who did not yet know she was a granddaughter from Geneva. She moved along the side aisle on her way back to the service station. The second row from the back was on her right. A finger lifted. It lifted from the arm of the chair in the second row from the back. It lifted perhaps half an inch. The finger belonged to Voronov. Voronov did not lift his head. He did not look at her. The finger was a small instruction. The instruction was, come. She came. She came because furniture comes when fingers lift. She angled her circuit toward his row, and she stopped at his chair, and she lifted the pitcher into position, and she did not look at his face. She looked at the glass on the small table at his elbow. The glass was empty. She began to pour. He spoke. He spoke in Russian. The Russian was the kind of Russian that had been polished by money and roughened by use, the Russian of a man who had been born somewhere east of Moscow and had bought himself a different accent and never quite finished paying for it. What he said, translated for the people in the room who did not speak the language and would never have to, was something close to this. Where did you train, little one? Amman, or further south? She did not flinch. She did not flinch because the question was not a question. The question was a needle. The needle was being pushed into the skin of her right wrist to see whether the wrist belonged to a woman who had been trained, and which trainers had done the work, and what country the trainers had been paid by. She had been told by the old woman in Amman that this would happen. She had been told that the needle would come from a particular man in a particular row, and that the correct response to the needle was the response of a woman who had not understood the question, so she did not understand it. She finished pouring. She set the pitcher upright on the tray. She lifted her eyes only as far as Voronov's lapel pin, which was a small silver thing in the shape of a wolf's head, and she gave him the half-second of attention that a server gives an unfamiliar guest before moving on. He spoke again. This time he spoke in English. The English was deliberately soft. The softness was for the audience that the second row could hear, which was the third row and the fourth row, and the softness was the kind of softness that men of his profession had been using to humiliate women in public for a very long time. Beautiful hands, he said in English. Steady. Steady is a difficult thing to be tonight. She did not answer. She did not answer because servers did not answer. She lowered her eyes to the tray. She angled her hips to move on. As she turned, his right hand left the arm of the chair, and the hand passed in a small economical arc that the rest of the room did not see, along the outside of her wrist where it was wrapped around the handle of the pitcher. The pass was brief. The pass was not an accident. The pass was three things at once. It was a measurement of her pulse. It was a measurement of the small, flat thing she was carrying along the inside of her forearm under the dove-gray sleeve. And it was a threat of the small kind, the kind that men of his profession used to put down a marker that they could come back and collect later if collecting became necessary. Her pulse did not change. The pulse not changing was the third thing she had been graded on in Amman. She had earned a passing grade on that one also. She moved on. She moved on along the side aisle, and she did not look back, and she did not adjust her sleeve, and she did not let the muscle in her shoulder lift even 1 degree. Voronov watched her go. His eyes were on her hair at the back of her neck. His mouth did the thing it had done at Abu Dhabi 3 years ago, when $6 million had walked out of a hotel suite with a leather briefcase and a forged Mamluk treatise inside. The thing the mouth did was an almost smile. The almost smile would not be a full smile until later. The almost smile carried him until later. He folded his hand back onto the arm of the chair. He waited. The room finished filling. Rafael's restaurant on Mulberry Street had a private dining room in the back that did not appear on the menu. And the floor of that dining room had been replaced 4 years ago with imported Carrara marble in a single night, and 3 of the 4 men who had laid the marble had not come home from the job. The 4th had bought a small house in Calabria with cash he had not earned. The story of the Carrara marble was known, in pieces, to every man and woman in the pier that evening. Some of them believed it. Some of them did not. None of them were going to ask. Rafael walked through the ballroom doors at 9:28 p.m., and the conversations did not stop, but they thinned, the way a forest goes quiet when something large is moving through it. He wore a charcoal suit cut for him in Naples by a tailor named Sergio who was paid in cash and did not keep records. The shoes were black, soft, silent on the carpet. His hair was combed back hard from a face that had been carved rather than grown. The mouth did not smile. The mouth had not been required to smile in 12 years. There was a small white scar above his left eyebrow that he had earned in the basement at 17, and that he had refused to have removed by any of the 4 surgeons who had offered. because the scar reminded him of who he had been before, and reminding himself was the only discipline he had not yet failed at. He paused at the head of the aisle. He let his eyes pass over the room. They paused on the Saudi prince in the second row. They paused on Voronov in the back, whose sallow face Rafael had known for 9 years and whose intentions he had stopped trusting 6. They paused on a small woman in dove gray at the end of the prince's table, and they did not move on right away. She felt the weight land on the back of her neck like a hand laid there by someone who was not sure yet if he was going to lift it again. She did not look up. She finished pouring water for the Cairene woman with the Coptic cross at her throat. She moved to the next glass. The pitcher was steady in her hand. She had been told, by people who had spent a great deal of money on her training, that the hand always shakes the first time. Hers did not. The not shaking was the thing she had spent 6 weeks earning. The not shaking was the reason she was going to live through tonight. She poured. She moved. She did not look up. He did not move on. He stood at the head of the aisle and he looked at the back of her neck for 3 full seconds, which in his world was an obscene quantity of time to look at anything that was supposed to be furniture. Katerina, the auctioneer at the front of the room, noticed. The man in the earpiece nearest to him noticed. Voronov in the back did not notice yet because Voronov was watching Rafael, and Rafael's face had not changed. The face had not changed. Only the duration had. Katerina, who had worked 9 years at Christie's before she had been quietly bought, understood that something in the duration was wrong, and she did the only thing a woman in her position could do, which was to look at her notes and pretend she had not seen. He started walking. He walked the way he had always walked, which was to say without choosing a destination, until the destination simply happened to be in front of him. The destination simply happened to be her. He stopped 2 steps from her tray. She felt him before she saw him. She lifted her eyes only as far as his lapel. There was no pin there. Men who needed pins were not Rafael De Luca. She finished pouring. She set the pitcher down on the tray very gently, the way you set down a thing when your hands are not trustworthy. They were trustworthy. She still set it down gently. She was a professional, and the gentleness was a kind of insurance. He did not speak yet. He was looking at her hair. The hair was pulled back so hard against her skull that the line of it disappeared into the collar of the dove-gray uniform. He could see, at her temple, where the hair had been pulled back, a small thin scar perhaps an inch long, white now and almost invisible against the skin, the kind of scar you got from a piece of stone or a piece of glass when you were a child, and a wall had been close to you when something had hit the wall. He had seen scars like that on the temples of soldiers. He had not seen one on the temple of a waitress. He stored the observation. He did not know yet what to do with it. He looked at her hands. The hands were thin and clean and unjeweled. There was a single faint callus on the side of her right index finger that was not the callus of a person who poured water for a living. It was the callus of a person who had held a particular kind of pen, or perhaps a particular kind of small blade, for a very long time. He stored that observation too. Then he addressed her in Arabic. What he said, in the dialect of the Naples shipping families who had done business with Beirut for 60 years and who had taught him their version of the language when he was 22, was something close to this. Move faster, you scentless little dog. The glass over here is empty. He said it pleasantly. The pleasant tone was the cruelty. The cruelty was the assumption that no one within earshot spoke the language well enough to register what he had called her. The cruelty was also a test. He was a man who tested rooms reflexively. If she flinched, she understood. If she understood, she was not what the catalog said she was. He needed to know which she was, because he had been looking at the back of her neck for 3 full seconds, and 3 full seconds was a duration that obligated him to know. She did not flinch. She lifted her face and looked at him in full for the first time. Her eyes were the color of wet olive wood. There was nothing in them yet. He had a heartbeat to register what was in his own chest, and what was in his own chest was a thing he had not felt since he was 19 years old, which is to say the recognition that he had stepped into something he was not going to be able to step out of, and his first instinct, the old animal instinct that had kept him alive for 2 decades, was to retreat. He did not retreat. He held. He held because she was looking at him, and the looking itself was a kind of restraint laid across him. And a man who flinches under a woman's gaze in his own ballroom is a man who has already conceded a thing he cannot afford to concede. Her mouth moved. She said one word in classical Arabic, the high register, the kind of Arabic that did not get spoken in restaurants or on streets, the kind that lived in old poetry and in the mouths of women who had been raised at a very specific kind of table. She said it like a verdict. Jabin. Coward. And then, before his face had finished doing the thing it was not supposed to do in public, she said the rest. She said it slow and clean, with the consonants placed where they had been placed in Damascus 1,000 years ago, with the meter intact, with the small breath at the caesura that no living speaker could fake unless they had been taught it as a child. She said it in a voice that did not lift, but that the front of the room could hear because the room had gone quiet around her without realizing the room had gone quiet. She said, "A coward sells what he could not steal himself. The catalog under your hand is a lie. The man who wrote it is a thief. The man who paid him is here. Look at him." She did not look at him when she said look at him. She did not need to. She let the words land. She watched his pupils widen and contract once and widen again, and she knew, in that contraction, that she had read his body correctly, and that the man in front of her was the man on the stairs, and that everything she had built for 2 years was now standing on a foundation she had not designed for, and that the foundation was going to either hold her or break her, and she had about 4 seconds to decide which. She decided. She held. The Kyrene woman with the Coptic cross made a small noise that was not quite a laugh and not quite a gasp. The Saudi prince in the second row stopped breathing for a full second. Voronov, in the back, leaned forward in his chair the way men lean forward when they realize the evening is about to be worth the flight from Moscow. The almost smile on Voronov's mouth, which had been carrying him since the wrist pass in the aisle, finished becoming a smile. The smile was small. No one but Voronov knew it was there. Rafael did not move. He did not move because in his world, the only correct response to a thing you had not predicted was stillness, and he had been trained in that stillness by his uncle in the basement at 17, and the stillness was now the only thing standing between him and the obscene fact that his hand wanted to lift toward her face. His hand wanted to lift and brush the small, thin scar at her temple. His hand wanted to know what the scar felt like under his thumb. He had not wanted to touch a woman's face in this particular way in 12 years. He held his hand at his side. The stillness took everything he had. He answered her in Arabic, the same register, the same poetic spine, because anything less would have been a second cowardice on top of the first. He said, "You speak the high tongue." He said it as a fact, not a question. He said it because he needed her to keep her face where it was so he could keep looking at it without it being a transaction. She answered. She said, "I read it also. I write it also. Would you like me to read what is on your cushion?" It was not a question. The pitcher was still on the tray. The tray was still steady. Her hand, the one with the callus on the side of the index finger, was relaxed at her side. He should have ended it there. He could have signaled the man in the earpiece nearest to him, and she would have been walked out a service door and into a town car, and the auction would have continued. He understood this in the same breath he understood that he was not going to do it. He understood, too, that she knew he was not going to do it. The knowing was in her face. The knowing was the thing that scorched him. He had not been known like that since he was a boy. The bottom of his stomach went cold, and the back of his neck went hot, and he did not move. He tilted his chin 1 degree toward the cushion at the front of the room. He had counted degrees his whole life. The degree was a small thing. He gave it to her. "Show me." She walked past him. She did not brush him. She did not hurry. She walked past him the way a woman walks past a doorway she has already decided to come back through. As she passed him, he caught, in the small disturbance of the air, a scent he should not have caught because she wore no perfume. He caught the scent of her hair. Her hair smelled, faintly, of bitter orange and of cedar, the way old houses in the old city of Damascus smelled in the late afternoon when the heat had begun to break, and the women of those houses had begun to open the upstairs windows. He had not smelled that scent in 21 years. He had been on a balcony once on a job, and he had smelled it through an open window across a courtyard. He had not understood then what he was smelling. He understood now. The understanding made his right hand close, once, into a fist at his side. The fist was small. No one saw it. It opened again before any of the men in the earpieces could file the fist into a report. She climbed the 4 shallow steps to the platform. Katerina at the lectern looked at Rafael. Rafael did not look back. Katerina, sensible woman that she was, opened her hands the way a person opens her hands to a wild animal and stepped half a pace away from the codex case. The woman in dove gray set both palms flat on the glass. Up close she was not what she had been from a distance. The dove gray did not fit her after all. It fit a smaller version of her that she had been pretending to be for 6 weeks. The way she had her hands on that case said she had touched the cover of that book before. Not in a museum, not under supervision. She had touched it in a room with curtains drawn and old men watching, and she had been a child the first time, and a girl the second, and the third time she had touched it she had been 13 years old, and her father had not lived another 48 hours. None of the people in the room knew any of that yet. Most of them never would. But Rafael De Luca was watching the way her thumbs settled along a particular corner of the case, and the thumb settled along the corner the way a thumb settles when it has settled there before, and a thing along the back of his throat that he had not felt in a very long time began to take a name. The name was not desire. Desire was a thing that visited men. This was the thing that moved in. The codex had been listed in the catalog as Maghrebi, 12th century, anonymous compiler. The catalog had lied. The catalog had been instructed to lie. The actual book was older than 12th century by at least 200 years and not anonymous at all. The gold borders were the breath. The text inside was the body. The body was poetry and law, and one passage written sideways in a child's hand in the margin of page 73. A passage no scholar had ever catalogued because no scholar had been allowed near it. Her thumb was over page 73. She spoke now in English, because the room needed her to, and her English was unaccented, the kind of English that you got from finishing schools in 3 countries at once. May I open it? Katerina looked at Rafael for the second time. Rafael looked back. He answered her with the single syllable he had been using to give permission for 15 years. Open. The case had a biometric lock calibrated to his right thumb and to Katerina's left, and to no other living person. Katerina pressed her thumb. The case clicked. She lifted the glass cover and set it on its stand. The woman in dove gray did not touch the codex. She did not need to. She turned to the room and she spoke without lifting her voice, and the room came to her because rooms do that when they are spoken to correctly. This book, she said, has 6 errors in its catalog description. I will list them for you. Then I will tell you what the 7th thing is, which is not an error because the catalog does not mention it at all. After that you may bid in whatever direction your conscience permits. She did not look at Rafael when she said the word conscience. She did not need to. She listed the vellum, the binding workshop in Fez that had not opened until 80 years after the text inside was written. The scribal hand on the first folio, which was not from the school the catalog claimed, but from a private tutor employed by a family in the old city of Damascus, a family whose surname had been removed from the colophon by someone who had taken a knife to the page and shaved the letters off. She listed the leather, the gold alloy, the ink mixed with iron from a particular well in a particular village outside Aleppo. She listed the signature in the lower corner of the inside back cover, the one the catalog had described as a flourish, which was not a flourish but a woman's name, and the woman had been the chief copyist of the manuscript, and she had died in 1247. She listed all 6 without taking a breath that anyone could see her take. The room let her finish. Even Voronov let her finish. He had not stopped leaning forward. She turned then to the codex and very lightly, with the back of one knuckle, she touched the corner of page 73. She did not turn the page. She did not need to. The 7th thing, she said more quietly, is the marginal note. The marginal note is in a child's hand. The child was 8 years old when she wrote it. The note says, in Arabic, my father has hidden the key behind the second mirror in the room with the blue floor. I am writing this because if I do not write it I will forget, and if I forget nothing in this house will open. She signed it Sarah. She did not date it. Her father did not know she had written in the margin until 40 years after she died. By then he was an old man and he had already lost the room with the blue floor to a fire. But he kept the book. He kept it because his daughter had touched it. She lifted her knuckle off the corner of the page. And so, she said, even more quietly, the catalog is wrong about what this book is. This is not a manuscript. This is a letter from a dead child to her father. And the man who is about to sell it tonight does not know what he is selling, or he knows and does not care. Either is a kind of coward. She turned to Rafael. She did not say his name. She did not need to. He had stopped breathing somewhere in the middle of the listing. He did not know when. He had begun breathing again at the words, my father. He had been breathing in shallow drags through his nose since. The back of his neck was wet. He had not sweated in a ballroom in 12 years. He was sweating now. The man in the earpiece nearest to him took one step forward and stopped. The man took one step forward because he had been trained to step forward when his boss began to sweat, and stopped because his boss had not signaled him, and not signaling in their world was an instruction. The instruction was, stand down. Voronov in the back moved. He moved the smallest possible distance a man could move and still be moving. He shifted his weight forward in his chair by perhaps an inch. His right hand, which had been on the arm of the chair, slid into his lap. His left hand stayed where it was. He did not yet reach for the inside of his jacket. He was a patient man. He had been patient for 3 years. He had recognized the posture on the platform, the way her thumb had rested on the corner of the case. The way her listing had come out in the exact order of a brief he himself had once paid 200,000 euros for and never been allowed to keep. He had known a name for 3 years that no one had ever attached a body to. The name was the Falcon. The body was on the platform. He understood that he was about to solve a problem tonight, or he was going to lose what was left of his life trying. The wrist pass in the aisle had been the confirmation. The pulse had not changed under his thumb. The not changing was a falcon's not changing. He had known it then. He was waiting to act on the knowing. He waited. Rafael did not look at him. Rafael did not need to. Rafael had catalogued Voronov's microshift by the audible change in Voronov's breathing, the way a sommelier knows by the carry of a glass that the wine has gone wrong before it touches his tongue. Rafael, without turning, lifted his left hand at his side and made the smallest possible gesture, 2 fingers down, palm flat. The 2 fingers were a signal to the man in the earpiece nearest the rear doors. The man in the earpiece nearest the rear doors began, very slowly, to move along the back wall, not toward Voronov, not yet, but in the general direction of containment. The shifting of the man in the earpiece was the gesture beneath the gesture. I see him. He is mine to handle. Do not move yet. Rafael walked up the 4 shallow steps to the platform. He stopped on the other side of the open case. The codex was between them. The light from below the case made the underside of her chin gold. He looked at her over the open book. He had not been this close to a woman who knew him in 12 years. The bitter orange and cedar scent of her hair was in his lungs now, and the lungs were not behaving. He spoke in English, low, not for the room. What is your name? She did not answer. He said it again, the same way. What is your name? What name? She said in the same low register. Would you like? The corner of his mouth moved. It moved a millimeter. It almost smiled. It did not smile. He had not let his mouth almost smile in 12 years. I bought this book, he said, from a man in Geneva. Brunn. I paid 4.8 million in clean wire. The paperwork was perfect. Brunn does not sell what does not exist. Brunn, she said, is a thief. Brunn is a man, he said, I have done business with for 12 years. Both can be true, she said. The thing you have done business with for 12 years is the thing you have not looked at for 12 years. You looked at the paperwork. You did not look at the book. You did not look at the book because if you had looked at it, you would have known. You would have known you had touched the page my brother had been reading the night you killed him. There was a small silence on the platform that had nothing to do with the silence in the rest of the room. The rest of the room had not heard. The rest of the room was watching Raphael's back and her face across the case, and the rest of the room understood that something was being said that they were not going to be told. The Saudi prince in the second row stopped breathing again, on instinct, the way a man stops breathing when a window opens onto a fall. The Kyrene woman with the Coptic cross did not look away. She had been told, 20 hours ago by a voice on a secured line, what she might be about to witness. She had not been told it would be this. Raphael put his right hand on the edge of the case. He put it there to keep himself standing. He did it slowly enough that no one in the room registered that he was using the case to keep himself standing. He looked at her over the open page. His mouth moved once before any words came out. The mouth did the thing it had not done in years, which was to fail at the first syllable. I did not. She did not let him finish. She put her hand very lightly on the back of his hand on the edge of the case, not over the codex, on the edge. The touch was perhaps 2 seconds long. The touch was the first touch. The room saw it. The room read it. The room misread it. The room thought it was forgiveness. It was not forgiveness. It was an instruction. The instruction was, not here, not in front of them, stand up. We finish this in the next room. He stood up. He cleared his throat. He turned to the room. His voice did the thing it had been trained to do, which was to come out level even when the rest of him was not level. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, in the voice that made the room go still without trying. We have an unscheduled situation. The catalog appears to contain certain inaccuracies which my house will address. The auction is suspended for 30 minutes. Drinks in the adjoining gallery. Please. The word please was a closed door. The room rose. The room moved slowly toward the adjoining gallery. Katerina at the lectern lifted her hands in the gesture of a hostess who had not been told anything and would not ask. The Saudi prince brushed an invisible piece of lint off his sleeve and offered his arm to a woman who had not arrived with him. The Kyrene woman with the Coptic cross stayed in her seat 1 beat longer than was polite, looked once at Myra on the platform, and let a long, slow breath out of her nose before she rose and walked, deliberately, past Voronov's chair, brushing the back of it with her hip in a way that was meant to be read. Voronov did not look at her. Voronov was looking at Raphael. Voronov rose last. He rose slowly. He walked along the side aisle. He stopped at the platform steps and he looked up at Raphael, and his face did something his face had not done in 3 years. It almost smiled in the open. The almost smile was a thing he had been carrying since Abu Dhabi, when $6 million had walked out of a hotel suite in a leather briefcase with a forged Mamluk treatise inside, and a forwarding address that had turned out, 18 months later, to be a school for the children of dead Syrian doctors in Amman. He had been looking for the body that signed those wires for 3 years. He found her tonight. He let the almost smile show. He let Raphael see it. He inclined his head to the woman on the platform. A pleasure, he said in English, careful in case anyone in the rear was listening. Truly, we have not been introduced. I am Voronov. I know your name, she said. I do not know yours, yet. That is correct. He looked at her another half-second. His eyes traveled, slowly, deliberately, down her right arm to the wrist where his thumb had passed 20 minutes earlier in the side aisle. He let her see him remember the wrist. He let her see him remember the pulse. The reminding was a second needle. He turned. He walked out through the double doors with the rest of the room. The man in the earpiece along the back wall went out behind him at a discreet distance. The doors closed. The ballroom held only the 2 of them on the platform, and Katerina at the lectern who had not been dismissed, and 1 bodyguard in the far corner. Raphael said 1 word to the bodyguard. The bodyguard left. He said 1 word to Katerina. Katerina left. He turned back to her. She had not moved. She had her hand on the open page of the codex still. Her other hand was at her side. The 2 of them stood on either side of the case. The room around them was the size of an aircraft hangar, and the silence in the room had the same quality as the silence inside a hangar at 4 in the morning when nothing is flying and no one is supposed to be there. He came around the case. He came around it slowly, the way you come around a piece of furniture you do not want a bump in the dark, and he stopped half a step closer to her than he had any business stopping. He was a foot taller than she was. She did not step back. She did not lift her chin to look up at him. She looked at the line where the collar of his shirt met his throat. She could see, in the soft light from under the case, a small old burn scar at the base of his neck above the collarbone, the kind of burn you got from a cigarette when you were a teenager, and a man with bigger hands than yours had decided you needed to learn something. She had not known about the scar. She filed it. She would carry it for the rest of her life. He spoke first. He spoke in Arabic. The Arabic was lower than the Arabic of the platform. The Arabic of the platform had been performance. This was not performance. Your brother. Yes. I was 22. I know. They told me arms broke her. They told me Iranian missiles up the Bekaa. They told me no women, no children. I know what they told you. When I came up the stairs, you were. On the landing, she said, bare feet. I had the book in my arms. I was running for the back stairs. I was 12. I had been told by my father the week before that if anyone ever came through the front door, I was to take the book from the table in the library and I was to go down the back stairs without making a sound. And I was to keep going until I reached the bakery on the next street and the baker would know what to do. I did exactly what my father said. I got to the landing. I saw you on the stairs. You had the rifle raised. I stopped. I could not breathe. I waited for you to fire. You did not fire. You lowered the rifle. You stepped to the side. You jerked your chin once toward the back stairs. I went. I did not make a sound. The bakery was where my father said it would be. The baker was who my father said he would be. I lived. She paused. My brother did not live. She had said the sentence in English by accident. She had been speaking Arabic the entire scene. The English had slipped out of her the way English slips out of a person who has spent 20 years speaking 3 languages and is now too tired to remember which one she is in. She heard herself say the sentence in English, and the hearing of it took her for the first time tonight by the throat. She tried to continue. She tried in Arabic. Her mouth opened. She said, my brother. The name did not come out. She had not said her brother's name out loud since she was 12 years old. She had said it in her head every day for 21 years. She had not said it out loud, in any language, to any other living person. The name was a small architecture that held up the inside of her chest. The name had load-bearing walls. The name had a roof. The name was, for her, the room that the rest of her had been built around since she was a child. She had not opened the door of that room since she was a child. She tried to open it now, and she found that she did not have the syllables. She had the consonants. She did not have the breath to put through them. My brother, she said again. She set her hand on the codex. She set it on page 73, lightly, just to the side of the marginal note in the child's hand. She was looking at the pencil mark her brother had made. She was looking at the underline no. She felt her chest do a thing it had not done in 21 years. She let it do the thing once, only once, against the inside of her teeth. T. The first consonant came out. The rest of the name did not. She closed her mouth. She closed her eyes. She did not lift her hand from the page. She breathed in once, very slowly, through her nose, the way she had been taught to breathe in Amman when a hand had been on her neck and her instructor had been waiting to see whether she could finish the technique. She finished the technique. She opened her eyes. She tried again. Terk, she said. The name came out. It came out small and intact, and exactly the size it had always been. The room did not change shape around it. The architecture of the inside of her chest did not collapse. The room with the load-bearing walls was still standing. The walls were just visible now, from the outside, to one other living person. Rafael moved. He moved before he had decided to move. The discipline that had held his hand at his side for 2 full hours did the thing disciplines do when the load that has been laid on them has finally exceeded the design specification. The discipline failed. His right hand lifted from his side, and his arm came up and his palm closed the 4 inches he had been holding open at her temple, and the palm landed on the small, thin scar at her temple, and his thumb settled along the line of her cheekbone. And he did not say, I am sorry, because he was not sorry, and he did not say, may I, because he had not earned the right to ask. He had moved. The move was the thing. The move could not be taken back. She did not pull away. She did not lean into the palm either. She held still. The holding still was not permission. The holding still was acknowledgement. He had broken the leash she had laid earlier in the night without saying out loud that she had laid it, and she was acknowledging that the breaking had happened, and she was not, in this single moment, going to punish him for it. The not punishing was a thing he would have to earn. He understood this. He held the palm. He spoke. The Arabic in his throat had now lost the high register entirely and was, for the first time since he was a boy, his grandmother's Arabic, the Arabic of a kitchen in Calabria where a woman had once taught him 3 words in a language she had learned from a man in Beirut who had come to her village in 1962. The Arabic was small. The Arabic was almost not Arabic. He said, "I could not." "I know," she said, "also small." The palm stayed. After a moment, she lifted her own hand. She put her right hand over his, the one on her temple, and she pressed his palm 1/4 degree more firmly against the scar. The pressing was the second thing. The pressing was, "You broke the leash and I am letting you keep it broken, for now, on this one beat, because of the name." Then she lifted his hand off her temple, slowly, and she returned it to his side. She returned it the way you put down a thing you have decided is yours. She did not let go of his wrist for an extra half-second. The half-second was a vow. The half-second was, "Not again until I say." He took the half-second. He stepped back exactly half a step. The half-step was the apology he was not going to be permitted to speak. She turned then slightly away from him. She put both her hands on the open codex case. She breathed once. Twice. The third time the breath came in even. She was back. The break had taken less than 30 seconds in real time. It had taken 21 years in the time of the inside of her chest. She said in Arabic, the high register restored. My brother Terk was reading. He was 19. He looked up when the door opened. He had a pencil in his hand. The pencil mark in this book, she touched lightly, the page beneath the marginal note, was the last mark he ever made. He had been arguing with the writer. The writer had said cowards and butchers are at least honest. My brother wrote in the margin in pencil, no. He underlined the no. He was about to write the rest of his argument when the door opened. He set the pencil down. He did not run. He looked up. You came in. You did your job. Rafael did not speak. The silence in the ballroom did the thing silences do when there is nothing in the room that can fill them. It pressed against the gold on the codex and made the gold look heavier. After a long moment he said, in Arabic, the syllables breaking in his throat, "I have looked for you." "I know. Every year, 12 years. "I know that too," she said. "I know how many private investigators you have hired. I know where you sent them. I know the names you used. I know the woman in Amman you paid to keep a watch on the children of the Halabi house in case any of us came back. She works for me. She has worked for me for 9 years. The reports she sent you were the reports I told her to send. You knew where I was. I have known where you were since I was 16. Why did you not come? Because I needed to know which kind of man you had become. The man on the stairs lowered the rifle. The man in this ballroom sells stolen books to Greek shipping families. Those are 2 different men. I needed to know which one I was coming for. I needed to know if I was coming with a verdict or with an offer. Which is it? She did not answer at once. She walked. She walked away from the case, slowly, 4 steps, and turned and walked back. The walking was the first restless thing he had seen her do all night. She stopped at the case. She put her hand on the open page. She looked at the pencil no in the margin. He watched her watch it. The watching was the 3rd hardest thing he had done in his life. I have spent 2 years, she said in Arabic, planning the next 40 minutes. I have spent 11 years planning the 2 years. I built a thing. I built it with the money you paid me. I built a school in Amman with the first wire. I built a clinic in Beirut with the 3rd. I built a press in Cairo with the 7th. I built the network that buys back my father's library piece by piece with the rest. I am here tonight because there are 11 more pieces in 11 other private collections, and there is one man in a chair in the back of the gallery on the other side of those doors who has been hunting my body for 3 years, and tonight is the only night the 11 and the 1 come into the same room. I built this night to handle both. The one in the chair. Voronov. He sold a forged Mamluk treatise 3 years ago through a hotel suite in Abu Dhabi to a buyer he believed to be a Saudi cousin of the Falcon. The buyer was me. The 6 million he paid is in the school in Amman. He has been looking for the Falcon ever since. He found me 8 months ago. I let him find me. I sent him an invitation to this auction through 3 blinds, the 3rd of which is a Belgian dealer who works for me and does not know it. I knew Voronov would come tonight. I knew he would come with a ceramic blade through the lobby metal detector. I knew he would move on me in the gallery between the second and the third drink. I have known these things for 8 months. The wrist pass in the aisle tonight was him confirming. The car waiting at the side entrance off 61st Street is not his car. The driver of that car is mine. The flight Voronov has been told is leaving JFK in 3 hours is not leaving JFK. It is leaving Teterboro. The destination of that flight is a small country in the Caucasus. The men who will meet him at the airfield in that country are the surviving sons of the men he ordered the firebombing of in 2008. Voronov will not be a further problem after tonight. I arranged that 8 months ago. I did not need you for any of that. Rafael did not speak. She turned to him. What I needed you for, she said in Arabic still, low, with her eyes on the burn scar at the base of his neck, was the question I have been carrying for 12 years. I needed to know whether the man on the stairs was still there. I could not know without standing in the same room as him. I could not stand in the same room as him without giving him a reason. The Codex was the reason. The Codex is the last of the pieces you have personally moved through your house. The other 10 you have not touched, because the other 10 passed through smaller men. So tonight was the only night. I made tonight. I gave you the Codex through Brunn knowing you would not look at the book. I gave you Brunn knowing Brunn would sell you anything. I walked in here tonight in a dove-gray uniform because I needed to see your face before you saw mine, and I needed to see your face when you saw mine, and I needed to do both in front of witnesses who would not let either of us pretend afterward. That was the plan. The plan worked, until I saw your face. Then the plan stopped working. Why? She did not answer right away. Because, she said finally, the man on the stairs is still in you. He took half a step closer. He could not help it. The half step was involuntary in a way nothing in his body had been involuntary in 12 years, until 30 seconds ago when his palm had closed 4 inches without his permission. He stopped himself. He held. His hand wanted to lift toward her temple again, and he kept it down with the discipline that was the only currency she had said she would accept. She watched the hand not lift. She filed the not lifting. She filed everything tonight. She had been filing him since she was 16 years old, and she would not stop filing him for the rest of her life. He spoke. The Arabic in his throat was now somewhere lower than the Arabic of the platform and the Arabic of the burn scar, and was reaching for a register he had not used since he was a boy in Calabria with his grandmother in a kitchen full of figs. I came here tonight, he said, to sell a book. I did not come here to be seen. No one has seen me in 12 years. You have seen me. I am not, I do not have language for what I am. There is language, she said. What? There is a word in the High Arabic for it. The word is not a beautiful word. Say it. Mamas, she said. It means a thing that has been pierced through. Specifically pierced through the chest by a thin instrument, in a place where the wound does not bleed outward but bleeds inward, into the lung, slowly, over a long time. The word is used in old poetry for a man who has fallen in love against his will, and against his interest, and against the small remaining mercy of his life. The word is also used for assassins, for a particular kind of assassin. The kind who has been struck through by the thing he was sent to kill. The poetry does not distinguish between the two uses. The poets believed they were the same condition. He said nothing. She lifted her face. She looked at him directly for the first time since the platform. Her eyes were the color of wet olive wood, and there was nothing pleasant in them. I came here tonight, she said, prepared to decide whether to kill you or take you. I had not decided which until you lifted your hand 4 inches from my temple. I will tell you now, because tonight requires it, that the verdict was sitting behind my left collarbone in a small ceramic blade of my own. The blade is still there. If you had failed the test on the platform, the blade was going to come out between the second and the third drink in the gallery, and Voronov was not going to be the man who bled on the carpet tonight. You would have been. I would have walked out the front entrance of the pier and never spoken to a soul about it. Everyone in this room would have agreed by morning that the seller of the Codex had suffered a quiet cardiac event in a private gallery, and that the night had been otherwise without incident. I had 3 of my people in position to make that happen. They are still in position. The blade is still behind my collarbone. He looked at her collarbone. He could not see the blade. He knew it was there. He believed her absolutely. You came here tonight, he said, to murder me. I came here tonight, she said, to do whichever the man on the stairs deserved. And she said his name then for the first time. She said it in full. Rafael De Luca, she said, the man on the stairs deserves to be taken. Not killed. Taken. Bound to the rest of the work I have left in me, tied to it, owned by it. There is no version of the next 11 years in which you go back to selling Greek shipping families anything. There is no version in which you sleep in a bed I am not in by the end of those years. There is no version in which the burn scar at the base of your neck does not belong, at some point, under my thumb. Do you understand what I am telling you? The platform, the ballroom, the hangar silence, he understood. The understanding went through him like the ceramic blade had not. I understand, he said. Tell me to stop, she said. Tell me to stop and I will take the codex and walk out the front entrance of the pier and never speak to you again, and you will spend the next 11 years buying back the rest of my family's library at 3 times the price through dealers I will never let you near. Tell me to stop. I am giving you the chance. He did not tell her to stop. He said, instead, in a voice that had to come out twice because the first time it did not come out at all, do not stop. She closed the 4 inches. She closed them with her own hand, not his. She lifted her right hand and she put it on the burn scar at the base of his neck, the pad of her thumb exactly on the scar, and she pressed once lightly, and she did not move the hand. The pressing was the seal. The pressing was the thing the 11 years would be built on. The pressing took perhaps 3 seconds. She lifted her thumb. She stepped back. Now, she said, we go through the gallery. Voronov will move when he sees us together. I have 3 of my people in position. I do not need a 4th. What I need from you is the thing I asked for at the start of this conversation. I need your stillness. I need you to stand in front of the man with the ceramic blade and do nothing while he comes for me. And I need to handle him. And I need you to keep your hand at your side. And I need you to not draw the small flat thing in your jacket. Because if you draw the small flat thing, I will be the one who has to explain why my partner in front of 80 witnesses turned the gallery of the pier into a homicide instead of an extraction. Are we clear? We are clear. She turned. She walked toward the double doors. He followed her after a beat. They reached the doors together. He put his hand on the door handle. He paused. She turned back. He said, in Arabic, low, only for her, if you had decided to kill me. I would have, she said. I would have walked out the front entrance and never looked at your face again. He said, I would have let you. She held his eyes for the length of 2 heartbeats. Then she said, very low in Arabic, I know. He pushed the door. The gallery on the other side smelled of champagne and the wax the pier used on its floors. The conversations in the gallery had been low and tense, the kind of low and tense that happens when 80 people in a room have all simultaneously decided not to be the first one to say a thing out loud. Heads turned. The conversations did not stop. They thinned. Raphael walked to the center of the gallery. Myra walked half a step behind him on his left. The half step on the left was the language. The Saudi prince saw the half step. The Cairene woman saw it. Voronov, leaning against a marble column near the bar with a champagne flute in his right hand that he had not drunk from, saw it. He saw it and his face did the thing it had done at the platform. It almost smiled. He set the flute down on the small round table next to the column. The man in the earpiece along the back wall did not move yet. Raphael had not signaled him to. Raphael spoke without lifting his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, 80 heads. The auction is cancelled. The room did the small, synchronized intake of breath that was the closest it would ever come to a gasp. The auction house's lead counsel, a small woman from a firm in Midtown, opened her tablet. The codex has been withdrawn. The 4.8 million paid to the seller will be returned to the buyer at the close of trading tomorrow by my house in full. The seller acknowledges that the catalog description was inaccurate. The seller acknowledges that the provenance was incomplete. The seller takes the loss. He paused. The codex will be returned tonight to its rightful holder. Her family is the family of al-Halabi al-Dimashqi. Her name is Myra al-Halabi. He said it in the long form, the way you say a name in a marriage contract. The Kyrene woman with the Coptic cross closed her eyes for half a second when she heard the long form. The Kyrene woman knew what the long form meant in that order, in that meter. The Kyrene woman lifted her chin 1 degree. Rafael turned to Myra. He did not bow. He placed his right hand flat over his own chest. He held it there. "I have done you a wrong," he said. "I did not know it was you. I would like, in the time I have left in this work, to put it back." She did not put her hand on her chest. She inclined her head 1 degree to her left. The gallery did not breathe. Voronov moved. He moved well. The ceramic blade was already in his right hand. He had pulled it from inside his jacket while the room was holding its breath at the words "rightful holder," and he came across the carpeted floor of the gallery faster than a man his size had any business moving. And he had 30 feet of open carpet between him and Myra's right shoulder. And he covered the first 20 in the time it took the Kyrene woman with the Coptic cross to slide 1 step sideways out of his lane. She had been waiting for him. Rafael saw him. Rafael did not move. This was the thing she had asked for, the thing she had spent the empty ballroom preparing him for, the thing that was now happening, and the thing the rest of the night depended on him not failing at, and the thing every cell in his body was now refusing. His arms wanted to come up. His legs wanted to step in front of her. His mouth wanted to call out. His right hand wanted to reach inside his jacket, where there was a small flat thing of his own that he had brought through the same metal detector by means he was not going to explain to anyone. He kept his hands at his sides. He kept his palms half open. He kept his eyes on her face because if he looked at Voronov, he would not be able to keep doing what she had asked him to do. He looked at her face. He looked at the small, thin scar at her temple. He held. Myra did not turn around. She did not need to. She had been tracking Voronov in the polished black surface of the lacquered tray held by the waiter at the bar with the bald spot, who had angled the tray 3 minutes earlier at exactly the angle she had specified. She watched Voronov in the tray. She watched him cover the last 10 feet of carpet. She waited. At 6 feet, he committed. At 6 feet, his weight came forward onto his right leg, and the blade came down and forward at the angle she had been told he favored, and the blade was aimed at the soft place between her shoulder and her neck, and the angle was the angle of a man who had killed 11 people with a knife before tonight, and who had stopped expecting any of them to know he was coming. She moved. She moved at the last possible moment, and the lateness was the cruelty, because the lateness made him commit fully, and the commitment was what she needed. She dropped her left hand to the edge of the small, round wooden table next to the marble column. She lifted the table by its top in a single motion. The table was 18 inches across and made of cherry. The edge of the table came up at the precise vertical, and Voronov's blade hand came down at the precise diagonal, and the ceramic blade hit the underside of the table edge, and the blade snapped clean in half. The half that remained in his grip continued down and past her shoulder, and the broken edge of it caught the dove-gray fabric of her uniform at the seam where the sleeve met the shoulder, and the broken edge tore through the fabric and through 3 layers of skin beneath. The cut was 4 inches long. The cut was not deep. The blood came through the dove-gray in a slow stripe that did not, immediately, show. Voronov's wrist hit the table edge a quarter second later. The wrist bent in a direction wrists do not bend. He made the small, surprised sound large men make when they have spent their lives never having been hurt before. His weight kept going forward. She rotated her hips. She brought her right elbow up. The elbow caught him under the chin. Not hard, hard enough. He went down on his back on the carpet, and the broken half of the blade came out of his hand and skidded along the floor and stopped against the toe of Raphael's shoe. The gallery did not scream. The gallery did the small, synchronized intake of breath again. And then Raphael, who had held his stillness for the 4 seconds the room had needed him to hold it, broke. He broke because he had seen the slow stripe of blood through the dove-gray at her shoulder, and because the stripe was widening, and because the man on the floor was still alive, and because every code Rafael De Luca had lived by since he was 9 years old in a basement in Reggio Calabria was now standing on its end and pointing in a single direction. He did not draw the small flat thing inside his jacket. He had promised her he would not. He kept the promise. He bent. He picked up the broken half of the ceramic blade by its handle. He turned. He stepped over Voronov's body on the carpet. He went down on one knee beside the body. He set the broken blade flat against the side of Voronov's neck. He did not press. He held it there. He looked at Voronov's eyes, which were open, glazed, beginning to focus. He waited until they focused. When they had focused, he said in Russian, in the kind of Russian that he had learned from a woman in Brighton Beach when he was 24 and that he had not spoken in 9 years, "You came to my city. You came into my room. You moved on a woman I am responsible for. You will get up now. You will walk to that door. The valet by the door will take you out the service entrance. You will get in the car waiting at the curb. You will go where the car takes you. If you survive the destination, you will not come back. If you do not survive the destination, the world will not be poorer for it. Are we clear?" Voronov's eyes did the slow blink of a man who had been hit hard enough that the blinking was a decision. "Clear," he said in Russian, hoarse. Rafael lifted the blade off Voronov's neck. He stood. He handed the broken half of the blade to the waiter at the bar with the bald spot, who had appeared at his elbow without anyone seeing the waiter cross the floor. The valet from the 11th floor was at Voronov's other side. Between them, they lifted Voronov to his feet. Voronov stood. He walked. He did not look back. He walked through the side door to the service hallway. The door closed behind him with a soft click. 6 seconds had passed since Voronov had moved. Rafael turned. Myra was holding her left hand over the seam of her right shoulder. Her hand was wet. The dove gray was wet. She was still standing. Her face had not changed. The not changing was a thing she had been trained for at a price the room would never know. He came to her. He did not run. The running would have been a confession. He walked, and he reached her in 3 strides, and he stopped half a step closer to her than he had any business stopping. "Let me see." She lifted her hand off her shoulder. The cut was 4 inches long. It was bleeding. It was not deep. He had seen worse cuts. He had given worse cuts. He had not seen this cut on this woman in this room, and the seeing of it did a thing in his chest that he did not have a name for and was not going to find one for tonight. His face did not change, because the not changing was now a discipline they shared. He took the white pocket square from his breast pocket. He folded it in half. He pressed it against the seam of her shoulder. He kept his hand there. Her blood came through the white cotton, and his thumb sat in the warmth of it, and he did not move his thumb. "I should have." "No." "Myra." "No," she said. "You did exactly what I asked. Do not undo it now, not in front of them." She lifted her right hand. She put it on his wrist, the wrist of the hand pressed against her shoulder. She held his wrist for 2 seconds. The 2 seconds were a thing the gallery saw and that the gallery would not forget. The Saudi prince in the 2nd row sat down again on the banquette. The Cairene woman with the Coptic cross had not moved. Myra turned to the gallery. "I apologize for the disturbance," she said in English level. "I would like, if I may, to finish what I came here to finish." No one in the room spoke. She walked, with his hand still pressed against her shoulder through the folded white square, back toward the double doors of the ballroom. The gallery, without instruction, followed. They followed slowly. They followed because they understood all at once, in the way a room understands a thing, that they were being permitted inside the edge of something they were not going to be told the center of. They filed into the ballroom. They took their seats. Katerina returned to her lectern. She did not lift the gavel. Rafael walked Myra up the 4 shallow steps to the platform. At the platform, he removed his hand from her shoulder. He folded the white pocket square once more, the bloodied side in. He pressed it into her palm and closed her fingers around it. He did it slowly. He did it as the room watched. The room watched the way the bloodied square went from his palm to hers, and the room watched her fingers close, and the room understood that a transaction had happened that did not, in any meaningful way, concern the codex. She turned to the codex. She closed it with both hands, slowly, in the way a person closes a book they have been waiting 12 years to close. The vellum made the dry, dry sound of vellum. She slid the codex out from under the case. She held it against her ribs the way a mother holds a small child who has fallen asleep in her arms in public and must be carried home very gently because the carrying is a kind of prayer. The dove gray at her shoulder was dark with her blood. The pocket square was warm in her left hand. She turned to Rafael. "Ya Rafik," she said in Arabic, only for him. He did not answer in Arabic this time. He answered in English because the English was for the room, and the room needed to know what the answer was. Until she said. She stepped down from the platform. He stepped down behind her. They walked down the carpeted aisle together, she half a step ahead this time because the codex required the half step, and he half a step behind her on her left because his stillness was now her stillness, and stillness walked behind the book. At the double doors, the valet from the 11th floor was waiting with a long camel-colored coat that had been brought down from a private suite no one in the room had known had been booked. The valet held the coat open. Myra shifted the codex to her left arm. She slipped her right arm into the sleeve, slowly because the shoulder hurt now, and she was permitting it to hurt for the first time. She shifted the codex to her right arm. She slipped her left arm into the other sleeve. She did not button the coat. At the door she paused. She turned once to look back at the 80 people in the seats. She did not smile. She did not nod. She let them see her face. The dove-gray collar showed at her throat above the open lapels of the camel coat. The codex was at her ribs. The blood at her shoulder was a small dark country on the dove-gray. She looked at the Cairene woman. The Cairene woman lifted her chin. She looked at the Saudi prince. The Saudi prince placed his palm over his heart. She looked at the Greek with the cargo ships out of Piraeus. The Greek did not move. The not moving was the recognition. She turned to Raphael. She did not say anything. She walked out through the double doors. He followed her after a beat. The valet closed the doors behind them. The hallway outside the ballroom had a runner of dark red carpet, and the runner ran the length of the pier's east corridor to the private elevator. The elevator doors were open. The third of her 3 people, the valet who would, in 20 minutes, drive Voronov to the small private hangar at Teterboro, stood beside the open doors. They reached the elevator. She turned to Raphael. "Where do you want to go?" "Where are you going?" "Downtown." "Then downtown." "You do not even know if I am going home." "I do not, then downtown." She inclined her head 1 degree to her left. He had been keeping count. The accumulation was now 5 degrees over the course of the night. He had been counting all of them. He had not counted anything that carefully since he was a boy. She stepped into the elevator. He stepped in after her. The valet pressed the button. The valet stepped back out. The doors closed. The elevator was small. It was paneled in a wood she did not recognize. There was a small mirror at the back. In the mirror she could see the 2 of them standing side by side, his hands at his sides, hers wrapped around the codex at her ribs and a folded, bloodied pocket square in her left palm. The elevator began to descend. She did not look at him. He did not look at her. Halfway down, between the 7th and 6th floors, the elevator hit the small judder that the pier's elevators always hit, the old judder, the one the building had not been able to engineer out in 80 years. The judder was small. It was enough that the codex shifted 1/2 inch in her grip, and the shift pulled at the 4-inch cut at her shoulder, and a small involuntary sound came out of her. That was the second involuntary sound she had made all night, and that surprised neither of them now, because the first one had already happened in the empty ballroom over her brother's name. He moved. He moved with permission this time, the permission he had earned in the empty ballroom by virtue of the half-second she had held his wrist before returning his hand to his side. His right arm came around her, low, just below the codex, his forearm flat against her ribs to support the weight of the book she was carrying. He did not press her into him. He held the book up. He held the book up so her shoulder did not have to. His other hand came up, and he did the thing he had done once already in the empty ballroom, but he did it slower this time, in a way that was permission rather than rupture. He lifted his left hand, and he set the palm of it, very gently, against the small, thin scar at her temple. She did not lean into the palm. She did not pull away from it. She closed her eyes. He stood there with one arm holding the codex against her ribs and the palm of his other hand on her temple, and the elevator descended slowly through the floors. And her breath, which had been level for most of the night, broke once again, very softly, against the inside of her teeth. The break was small. He felt it under his thumb. He felt it because his thumb had moved, without his permission, to the corner of her mouth, the way a man's thumb does when he has been keeping it away from a corner of a mouth for 2 hours, and the corner of the mouth is finally within reach. He did not press the corner. She opened her eyes. She looked up at him from under his palm. "Not in the elevator," she said in Arabic, very low. "I know. In the car. In the car. Not yet in the car. Later's in the car." "When in the car?" "When the snow has covered 49th Street, she said. "When we are past the bridge. When the part of the night that requires words is finished and the part that does not has begun." "That is a long time." "It is exactly as long as I am willing to make it, not a second more." He held her eyes a beat longer. "Myra," he said. The name in his mouth had the weight of a thing he had been carrying his whole life, and only tonight learned he had been carrying. "Yes. Say my name back." She did. She said it the way she had said the listing of the 6 errors, in the clean classical Arabic, with the consonants placed where they had been placed in Damascus 1,000 years ago. "Rafael," she said. "Rafael De Luca." Once more. "Rafael." The 3rd time. "Rafael." He let his palm fall from her temple. He let the arm at her ribs ease. He kept his forearm under the codex 1/2 second longer than he needed to, because the 1/2 second was a thing he was permitted, and a man takes the things he is permitted when the night has not yet promised him more. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. The doorman saw the camel coat and the codex and the woman at the center of the camel coat with a dark country at her shoulder, and the doorman did not let his face change. The doorman had been trained, by the Pierre, for 40 years, in the discipline of not letting his face change. He opened the lobby door. The cold air came in. The snow on 5th Avenue was falling steadily now, and the awning above the door was white with it, and the doormen along the awning stood very still. The car was at the curb. He helped her into the back of the car. He kept the touch on her good shoulder, the one without the cut, because the touch on the cut shoulder was a thing they were saving for later. She sat down with the codex on her lap and the pocket square in her hand. He walked around the car. He got in on her left side. The driver, who was one of his, did not turn around. The driver put the car in gear. The car pulled forward into the snow. The car turned east on 49th. The snow kept falling. Inside the car, in the dim light from the dashboard, the gold leaf border of the codex against the camel of her coat showed only as a thin, warm line. Her right hand was on the corner of the cover, where, beneath the leather, page 73 would be. Her left hand was open in her lap with the folded, bloodied square in the palm. He looked at her left hand. He did not look at her face yet. "There is going to be a great deal of work," he said, in English, in the next 11 years. "Yes. I will not be the same man at the end of it." "No. Neither will you." "No. There are 11 pieces." "There are. And after the 11. After the 11, she said, we will see." "See what?" "See what is left of us." The car crossed Park Avenue. The snow on Park Avenue was already an inch thick on the empty stretch between the lights. He looked, for the first time since the elevator, at her face. Her face was turned to him. She had been waiting for him to look. The waiting had been the 3rd hardest thing she had done that night. The 3rd hardest thing, after the standing on the platform, and after the not turning around when Voronov had crossed the gallery. He lifted his right hand. He set the palm of it again against the small, thin scar at her temple. He held it there a moment. Then he slid it back slowly along the side of her head, and his fingers very gently went under the dove-gray collar at the back of her neck, where the hair had been pulled back hard against her skull for 6 weeks. His fingers very gently found the pins. He drew the pins out, one at a time. He set them, one at a time, on the small leather console between them. The pins made small, dry sounds against the leather. There were 7 pins. He drew them all. At the 6th pin his hand stopped. The 6th pin had caught on a small section of hair that had been pinned for too long, and the catching pulled, and the pulling made her right shoulder lift the smallest possible distance, and the lifting was the 3rd involuntary sound of the night. The sound that came out of her was not a word. It was the kind of sound a woman makes when she has been holding still for 2 hours, and the small holding has begun, finally, to give way. Rafael laughed. He laughed once, briefly, against her temple, in the kind of laugh that surprises the man it comes out of, the kind that makes a man's chest do a thing it has not done since he was a boy. The laugh was small. It was not a happy laugh. It was a laugh that came out of him because his architecture, which had been holding for 40 years across 2 continents and 3 languages, had picked this exact half-inch of a 6th hairpin and a sound at the inside of a woman's throat as the place to finally fail. He had not laughed in 12 years. He had not laughed in this register since he was 9. The laugh came out and went into her hair and stopped. She did not move. She felt the laugh against her temple. She heard it. She let it land. She did not respond to it. She did not yet permit it. The not permitting was important. The laugh had to know, after the fact, that it had been a kind of rupture too, and that ruptures even of this small kind were not free in the architecture they were now building together. He worked the 6th pin free, slowly, with both hands. He drew the 7th. He set both on the leather console with the other 5. Her hair came down. It came down slowly because it had been pinned for 6 weeks, and the hair had agreed to a shape it had not chosen, and the shape did not give itself up at once. It came down in 3 slow drops to her shoulders. It was darker than he had thought it would be. It smelled, up close, of bitter orange and cedar, and of something else underneath, the something else he had not been close enough to smell yet, which was the smell of a particular kind of small white flower that grew on the inner courtyards of the houses of the old city of Damascus, and that he had last smelled 21 years ago through an open window. He breathed in. He breathed in once, all the way down, the way a man breathes when he has not breathed all the way down in 12 years. She lifted her hand. She lifted her right hand off the codex, very slowly, and she set the palm of it flat against the front of his throat. She set it there the way she had set her thumb on the corner of the codex case, like she had set it there before. Her thumb was at the line where his collar met his throat. The pad of her thumb sat exactly on the small old burn scar above his collarbone that she had filed 2 hours ago in an empty ballroom and that she had been carrying inside her ribs since. She did not press. She held. He did not move. The car turned south on Lexington. "Yarafiki," she said in Arabic, very low. "Yarafikati." "Lean down." He leaned down. He leaned down slowly, the way the elevator had juddered between the floors, in a small mechanical descent he had not engineered and could not reverse. He leaned down until his forehead was against hers, and the bitter orange and the cedar and the small white flower were the only air in the car, and her thumb on the burn scar was the only pressure in his world, and the codex on her lap was the only weight that mattered between them. He did not kiss her. He did not need to. The not kissing was the leash, and the leash was the vow, and the vow was the 11 years and the 11 pieces, and the man she had not yet finished deciding he was. He breathed against her mouth. She breathed against his. He spoke first. He spoke in Arabic against her mouth, lower than he had said anything all night. "I will not survive you," he said. "I am telling you so that you know. I will not survive what you are. I will not survive the next 11 years. The man you walked into the pier to test is finished. I am the thing that is left. The thing that is left belongs to you. If you put me down, I will not get up. If you set me to a task, I will not stop until the task is finished. If you turn your face from me, I will turn mine to the wall and stop. Do you understand what I am telling you?" "I understand," she said against his mouth. "I do not have a word for what you are. The high tongue does not have a word for it. The low tongue does not. There is no word. I have looked." "There is a word," she said. "You know the word." "Say it." "Habibi," she said. "The word that has done the work for 1,000 years. The word that is too small for what you mean, and that is the only word there is. Say it to me." He said it. He said it against her mouth. He said it 3 times, each lower than the last. "Habibi," she said back, the feminine ending, habibti. He did not move for a long moment. They stayed like that for the length of 2 blocks. The snow on the windshield collected slowly into the kind of white that a windshield wiper would not clear all at once. The driver, who was one of his, did not turn the wipers on. The driver kept his eyes on the road and his hands at 10 and 2, and his face the face of a man who had not been in the car for the last 2 minutes. She lifted her forehead off his. He lifted his off hers. She kept her thumb on the burn scar a moment longer. Then she lowered her hand, slowly, back to the corner of the codex. He sat back. The car continued south on Lexington. At 42nd, the driver turned east. At 2nd Avenue, he turned south. The snow on the avenues was thick now, and the city had gone the kind of quiet that the city only goes when the snow has decided to be the only voice. "There is a doctor on Mott Street," she said in English, eyes ahead. "I know. He is one of mine. I know that also. You have known for how long?" 9 minutes. "How?" "When I felt the back of your neck, in the elevator, my fingers passed a small flat thing under your collar. A tracker. The tracker is the kind that Fetterman in Tel Aviv makes. Fetterman in Tel Aviv has only ever made 11 of those. I know who has 9 of them. I know who has 2 of them. The 2 are yours." "The doctor on Mott Street." "The doctor on Mott Street is one of them. You have not had me followed." "I have not. I have known for 9 minutes that I could. And after tonight, I will not." "Why?" "Because the corner of your mouth is a thing I would like to find when I look for it, and not before." She did not answer. She did, very faintly, smile. It was the first smile of the night. It was small. It was tired. It was not the smile of a woman who had won. It was the smile of a woman who had been carrying a book for 12 years and who, for the first time since she was 12, was carrying it next to a man who had not made her carry it alone. The car turned onto Mott. The doctor's office was 3 doors down. The light above the door was on. The doctor, who had been told an hour ago that he might be needed, was already at the door. Rafael got out first. He came around the car. He opened her door. He helped her out. He kept his hand under her right elbow, the elbow above the cut, because the cut shoulder did not need a hand on it. The codex was at her ribs. The pocket square was in her left hand. The snow on Mott Street was 3 inches deep, and the light from the doctor's window was warm and yellow, and the door was open. At the door she paused. She turned to him. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow. You will come to the warehouse on Vandam. The 11 names are in a folder in the 3rd drawer of the desk on the 2nd floor. The folder has a green tab. The green tab means hard. Begin with the easy ones first. We will do the green tab together." "When?" 9 in the morning. "I will be there at 8:30. "I will be there at 8. "I will be there at 7. "Do not push it." "I am pushing it." "I know." She did not move from the door. She lifted her right hand again. She set the palm of it on his face. Her thumb was at the corner of his mouth, and her fingers were along the line of his jaw, and the small, thin scar at her own temple was an inch from his. She held him like that. The holding was not soft. It was the way you hold a thing you have decided is yours, and that you are warning the world it would be unwise to come for. "You will not," she said in Arabic against his mouth, in a voice that did not lift but that had something in it that had not been in any of the other voices she had used tonight. "You will not, in the next 11 years, touch any hand that is not mine. You will not eat at a table I have not approved. You will not put a name in your mouth that I have not given you. You will not stand in a room where I am not the woman you look at first. You will sleep where I send you to sleep. You will rise when I rise. You will die when I die and not before. Do you accept?" He did not blink. "I accept," he said in Arabic against her mouth. "You will not," she said, in the same register, "ever forgive me for taking you tonight. You will live with it. You will not forgive it. I will not ask you to." "I will not forgive you," he said. "I will love you. Those are not the same thing." "Good," she said. "The not the same as the leash. Keep it." She let her hand fall. She did not kiss him. She turned. She walked into the doctor's office. The doctor closed the door behind her. The light in the window stayed on. Rafael stood on the snow on Mott Street for 1 full minute. The snow collected on his shoulders. He did not brush it off. He stood there and he breathed in once, all the way down, the way he had breathed in the car, and he held the breath, and he let it out, and he watched the light in the doctor's window for the length of one breath, and he turned, and he walked back to the car. The driver did not say anything. The driver did not need to. The car pulled away from the curb. On the seat beside him, where she had been sitting, there were 7 hair pins on the leather console. He looked at the pins. He picked them up, one at a time. He opened his own palm and he set the 7 pins in the center of his palm, and he closed his fingers around them, and he held them as the car turned north on the Bowery, and the snow continued to fall, and the city continued to be quiet. The pins were warm. The warm was hers. The closing of his fingers around the warm was the only sound in the car for a long time. The car drove north. The driver did not turn on the wipers. The snow on the windshield collected into the kind of white that did not clear. He did not ask the driver to clear it. He sat with the pins in his closed hand and his eyes on the snow on the windshield until the car reached the river, and the river took the last of the city's light, and the closed hand around the 7 pins did not open again.